This next object is a stemmed black pottery vessel from the Longshan culture in China. This is kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm a ceramic artist primarily, and this thing is just amazing. They're paper thin, they're delicate, so fine, and the kind of technology that this represents is pretty spectacular. First of all, they knew how to mine and prepare clay. Second of all, they knew how to shape it in very sophisticated ways. This is a combination of coil building and possibly even the potter's wheel, which is a pretty wonderful tool. They also understood firing techniques. They knew how to build and control large, very large, basically ovens, and these ovens would go up to probably, this piece was probably fired to about 1950 degrees Fahrenheit in a very controlled setting. So the technology alone is pretty spectacular. Also, in a cultural sense, what this thing represents is cultural divisions within society. This is not really an object for household use. It would have been a ritual or ceremonial vessel, and only the wealthy people would have been able to afford this object. So, in essence, it's an object of conspicuous consumption. So it's pretty spectacular that all of these cultural elements were in place so long ago. Okay, the next piece we're going to look at is Maya Lin's Vietnam War Memorial. This is a pretty interesting site. Some of you may have been there, I don't know, it's pretty far from Nebraska. If you haven't gotten to Washington, D.C., then probably you haven't been there. But what's interesting about this memorial is that it really signifies a break from the previous kinds of memorials. Well, sort of. Memorials go all the way back to the Stone Age, really, and if you think about the most famous memorials, we have Egyptian tombs, the pyramids, Great Pyramids of Giza are memorials in a way. So the tendency to make a memorial object is strongly rooted in human nature, but this one is a different kind. It's a very abstract memorial, and it was very, very contentious when it was made. It appears as sort of a scar in the landscape. The experience of going to the Vietnam War Memorial is really quite powerful. You walk down a slope toward the middle, and it feels as if you're descending, which is a really kind of a strong feeling. And on the wall, which is polished to a mirror-like surface, are all the names of every soldier killed, every American soldier killed in Vietnam. And something that's strange is that it's not in alphabetical order. The names are ordered by date. So it requires a really specific knowledge of the individual. You can't just look for people in a way that you normally would be able to. It's a very focused memorial, and the mirror surface reflects your face back and kind of implicates you. It's a really powerful memorial, but like I say, very contentious. And there was actually an alternative memorial built across the lawn, which is a very traditional memorial, just bronze figures, soldiers, and it's just a really fascinating process. And by the way, a side note, she was a college student when she was given this commission, so it was a pretty amazing honor. That's about it. Here we have a piece that will be recognizable to most of you, and a really kind of seminal signifier in sort of modern art history. What this is Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, and what this meant for art, and painting specifically, is a real change in the way that painting was used. Before this time, painting was primarily used by artists to create a realistic and believable illusion of the three-dimensional world on a two-dimensional plane. And this had been the goal of painters and draftsmen or draftswomen since classical Greece and Rome. But around this time, before this time, slightly before this time, but around this time, what happened is painters began to acknowledge the illusion. So during this period, you have the camera coming into popular use, so the painter was no longer required for creating a snapshot of life. You know, it was no longer necessary to commission a portrait. If you wanted an image, you could just get a camera or get a photographer to do this for you. So painting began to change, and what happened, as I said before, is that the painter began to acknowledge the illusion. They acknowledged the fact that what they were painting was not what it was depicting. It was actually paint on a flat surface, and this led to the future development of non-objective abstraction. And what that means is that there was no picture, there was only paint, shapes, colors, line, and these things were used to express intent and concept over a narrative image. So this is, I mean, it seems like a big deal to me because I study this stuff, but you know, you guys might not think it's that important, but I think it's pretty important. The final piece we're going to look at for this chapter is a piece by a contemporary artist, and it's called Emoter. And what I want you guys to look at when you're looking at this is how little resemblance it bears to anything that we've seen before. It's non-traditional material, it's non-traditional format, it is responsive to a television or radio that's playing within the setup. You can see that in your book. It's kinetic, which means it moves. It's just such an eccentric format that it just kind of typifies contemporary art, contemporary sculpture. You could even, I guess, call it painting in a way, or printmaking, because it's this digital print. But, you know, it's using contemporary technology. I mean, the sort of vastness of potential modes of expression is this sort of landscape that we find ourselves in now. So it's going to be pretty easy to categorize things throughout the majority of human history when it comes to art objects. But then when you get to real contemporary art, you know, this is at and after about 1970, you start to see an explosion of just variety in media. So that's about it for this first chapter. Again, this is a pretty broad overview. We did skip over a lot, but we'll readdress all that stuff. I hope this is a little more interesting than reading a transcript, and I hope everyone can access it. So I will talk to you again next chapter.